We're live. It's 3/14/2026, Pi Day. Isn't this Stephen Hawking's death day and Einstein's birthday? Both died at 76. I remember there's some kind of 3/14 connection there from a scripted history perspective. All these birthdays, like the shooter of Reagan having JFK's birthday. That's kind of interesting. Or Trump getting shot on 7/13, Julius Caesar's birthday, and he played Julius Caesar. I didn't put that into the thing. He didn't play him, but they did Julius Caesar. They did Caesar in the Park, and they had Trump as Caesar getting stabbed. And Laura Loomer jumped on the stage to stop it. I mean, she's been part of this show for a long time. And, she makes a lot of horrible statements about people from anywhere but America. Like she's kind of a xenophobe. That's her position. So she's not really a red pill or a J pill because she believes that Islam is the enemy. So you kind of have this interesting thing how the left-right has this big fundamental schism, but the right itself has its own inner schism because the left embraces its fringe. They cover for it. Oh, those are just our peaceful protesters, as they're pulling people out of cars and burning dumpsters and looting. But when the right fringe speaks up, the mainstream Republicans distance themselves. It's like they're embarrassed of it. That wing. So Loomer is representative of the mainstream anti-Islam Republicans, whereas Candace Owens is representative of the woke right anti-Israel crowd, or Tucker Carlson on that side too. So when Tucker fell out of Fox, it was showing how he shifted from one side of their faction to the other, their factioned party. And the political horseshoe thing is a model. It's not just a theoretical model, it's actually been implemented. They actually built it. So today I uploaded a video about Jesse on Fire. And the reason why I mentioned him is on Twitter, you can @ people. And I think we need to be very transparent and open and willing to debate. And what I'm saying is I consider him to be controlled op because I think he's too smart to be fooled, to be lulled into this idea that alternative media is still like a viable source of information, that it's not part of the establishment. I mean, the thing is, okay, the reason why I'm speaking about this person in particular, because I've never watched his channel before, but he's got 611,000 subs. He's got a big reach, and he's just now suggesting that Charlie Kirk was squibbed. It's like, where have you been? That was September. We said it on September 10th. On September 10th, we were talking about the squib. People were like, what's a squib? So here we are months later, and now you're like, I think, guys, I don't know how to say this, but I got to be careful. I don't want to get sued. I got to tap dance. I got to beat around the bush. I think Charlie Kirk might be alive. But then the way he explains it is, it's because during the Biden administration, they were going to arrest Charlie, and he was going to spend the rest of his time on Earth in a penitentiary, that he was going to be arrested, which is ludicrous. And that when Trump won, he had this very public sigh of relief. And the interpretation is because he knew if Biden was in office, he would have been arrested. I mean, comical it sounds cartoony. I'm sorry, but nobody's going to arrest Charlie Kirk. That's just absurd. But that's the argument here, is that TPUSA was getting into trouble, and he somehow made a deal, and the government helped, and Trump helped, and they faked his death and put him into witness protection. Like, that's the story. And I've heard variants of this theory with other shootings. Like, Trump heard that the deep state was going to try to shoot him at Butler, so they staged it to preempt it. Again, these things don't make sense, just so you know. I don't think they do. Or, as I heard many months ago, Charlie Kirk heard that Israel was going to kill him, so he staged his death with a hologram, or he staged his death with a special effect. All these explanations for him staging it, but why did he stage it? Because they were going to come after him, so we had to go undercover. Now, again, that's all ludicrous. So what it tells you here, that I call that a containment operation. They don't want you to connect the dots. Charlie Kirk's neck is one dot. Donald Trump's ear, his earlobe on the top part of his ear is like my earlobe. It's not your earlobe, man. But anyway, that's another dot. Boston bombing, another dot. Mass shootings, dots. These are all dots, and they're all connected. And what do they have in common? They're all simulated. So he's hiding the Truman Show. He's hiding the Matrix by doing this, by telling the truth, but then putting it in the wrong context. And that's what I'm saying. He's right about Charlie Kirk being alive, but he's mistaken about the context. And I'm saying this is a purposeful disinformation line. They're misdirecting people, because if you put it in the right context, it unravels the system. If you can conceptualize, even as a hypothetical, Charlie Kirk's neck wound being fake and this being some kind of an operation, well, then you just admit into your mind the concept of what we call here fakeability. Fakeability means, the concept as we use it is, if it can be faked in the movies, if it can be faked at a magic show, it can be faked on the news. So is this a fakeable thing? And if you never entertain the notion, then your answer is going to be, your presupposition is going to be no. But the more you know about fakeability, the more reason you have to be skeptical, because it's like, you didn't know they were capable of doing this. And they don't want you to connect it to other dots as well, because he seems to think that Candace doesn't know, and Erica was trying to tell him or tell her with some, and she didn't read between the lines. So they're adding a bunch of stuff. And I saw this after Butler. There was this self-professed security expert, and he said that when we do security for dignitaries and politicians, if somebody shoots at them, they stay down undercover. We do not let them stand up and pose for the cameras. That was my clue that Donald Trump's shooting was a PR stunt. But even though that's true, fundamentally, he added, and then they just found some undesirable to pose as the shooter so they could kill him and nobody would care. And then they instructed him to miss, but he accidentally shot the fireman. All right, so there you go. He's like, went right off the rails. So you admit that the ear wound is fake, but you think they're firing real rounds? So they can't get past what I call the bloody guardrail. If they see deaths, they generally assume the thing to be fundamentally real. Like, it's real, but they added some fake stuff. No, this is 100% fakery. And the shooter was not killed in Butler. But we're talking about the same production company and the same process. So in order to hide the psyop, or rather to bury the psy-war, they hyper-focus on the individual psyop. So when I say psy-war, I'm referring to the full-time maintenance of the worldview and all of the psychological warfare within. But the psy-op is the individual operation, the individual event. And the individual event here is his focus, and he's being accurate, but he's not connecting it to the psy-war. I have a short ebook out on Kindle. It's called The Forest of Fakery, and you can also find it in the handbook for the recently deprogrammed. And The Forest of Fakery is about a group of truthers walking through the woods, and there's a few loudmouths with megaphones who basically dominate the conversation. And these individuals will lead the conspiracy theorists to trees, which they find to be fake. This tree's fake. It's actually some kind of a, it's synthetic. It's got like rubber for bark. It's just basically plastic. I mean, so they're finding out that these trees are fake. And then the loud megaphone ones move on and point out the next fake tree. So these truthers now have several fake trees to hyper focus on and figure out who put them there and what the purpose of these trees are. But meanwhile, the entire forest of trees is fake. And what we're seeing here is that the popular channels will focus on individual psyops, individual events, and not connect them to the big picture, because they can't be taken out. They're in a system. These are not anomalies. It is standard operating procedure. So you can actually hide the truth here by putting it in the wrong context. And context is everything. And I've been wanting to talk about the context as far as the points of view. So there's a lot of internal diversity of thought and opinion. We see it all the time. We're always observing how people have a lot of independent thinking, but they all have the same parameters. And by parameters, I mean they have the same built-in presuppositions that actually limit their thought in ways they may not even know. So if you're a mainstreamer, you just tacitly accept what is broadcast is true. You're not really super integrated into the news. That's your point of view. If you're more engaged in news, woke left or woke right, you have more nuanced take, you have more drama, more stories, more immersed, but you're still within the same bounds. You're still within the same world or universe of ideas. Whether you're partially engaged or fully engaged, neither of these perspectives takes into account what we term here systemic fakery. Conspiracy theorists haven't gotten here yet. They're still chasing truther bait and conspiracy candy, and they haven't put it together. They're enamored with the fake trees, and they're enamored with the loudmouths and the big platforms, but they don't really connect these things. Like if you've been following conspiracies for more than 5 or 10 years, you should know that you're a target demographic. And the conspiracies that you're hearing about, if you hear about it, if it's popular, it's likely planted there. That's the ugly truth about Trutherville. It's a subset of the mainstream. It's like, imagine like the Truman Show movie, if he's trying to get out, but instead of getting out, he just goes into his friend's basement and talks about how things might be fake all day. Some things might be fake. Some people here are lying. Something's not right. And his friend will just validate him. Yeah, of course. Pass the bomb. And they never leave that basement. So Trutherville is like a basement. When I say it's a subset of the mainstream, I mean, it accepts all of the presuppositions and then it just adds on its own conspiracy slop into the mix. That's not a formula for truth. That's additive. That's adding, as in ad hoc, as in making up explanations or forming conjecture that can fill in the blanks to explain it in a way that the mainstream does not, or a way that you feel like the mainstream is lying. Our perspective here is based on what's this, I would term the subtractive route. Anything we can't verify, we subtract. Kevin Mooring says they all work for the same disinformation company. Yes. Linda Curtis says the nature of things versus the fakery of things. Yeah, so I'm literally saying that Jesse on Fire is controlled op. You don't have to be paid by the government to be a controlled op agent. You can just be a follower, a useful idiot for the anti or the controlled opposition anti-establishment. If you're a red pill promulgating truther, you are a propaganda mule. Swirling Spice says, I saw this post. Erica Kirk has enough K's in her name to automatically qualify her for the current administration. Yeah, I remember writing her name with the 3 K's. That's actually funny. And it's probably intentional. That's funny to qualify her for the current administration. Well, what is she now? She's on the Air Force Academy board. She's going to be VP just like her corresponding character in Heads of State. And then she's going to conspire to take out the president, probably J.D. Vance. And so here's another thing, too. What this guy is concealing is that Erica's back. Well, he's not concealing it directly. It's more like the way they frame things, they selectively ignore things. They lie by omission, or they create a false perception. And you have to ask follow-up questions to see why these things are relevant. So, for example, if Charlie Kirk's not dead, then it means he wasn't really a Christian. Because he knew all along he was going to squib everybody on his way out as part of some psyop to rip the country apart. That's a wolf in sheep's clothing. Not that any of today's Christians or MAGAs would recognize one. And Erica and his relationship needs to be called into question. So people are saying, oh, she wasn't ever a trad wife. She was just seeking fame and money. Listen to this. And they've painted up this picture of her being this wicked woman, this wicked witch, Jezebel, who assassinated her husband and all this. But the fact of it is, they want you to have that perception of her. They wanted to give you the overblown, unbelievable mourning widow and then turn it into this monstrosity that we see. And there's a musical out right now. It's kind of funny. It's called the Erica Kirk musical. But what I mean, it's genuinely funny, but the person who created it thinks that Erica Kirk is real. So they're responding to a heel, a world wrestling entertainment level heel, a bad guy, made for TV bad guy. And what I'm pointing out here is that in all the instances of the predictive programming for Erica Kirk, you have the element of her being femme fatale, villain, disingenuous, a conspirator. And even the term Jezebel has been brought up multiple times, like the Jezebel witches got Charlie, or Hurricane Jezebel in Snake Eyes, or the Tempest, which is a storm. Like storm, Hurricane Jezebel. They've reiterated these things. She was called a storm directly during Charlie's memorial. So my point of it is, we don't know what her backstory is because she's playing a role, just like we don't know Charlie's background. It's a mistake to think you know any of these people. And if Charlie's death was fake, then you have to ask follow-ups. Did J.D. Vance know? Well, obviously. So that should really color your perception of your leadership because they're in on the deceptions. This is the supreme art of war. This is the use of deception and mind war, psychological warfare, but as a form of government. Erica Kirk obviously knows. Their kids are probably fake or rented. I don't think their kids exist. I don't think they even liked each other. They don't. It's probably true that they didn't even like each other. They probably just worked together. They had the same pay grade, the same security clearance. I mean, this is a psyop more than a decade plus in the making. So you can also kind of rule in the possibility that all the little clips you see of her over the years were planted. And then when she came out in leather pants to hug J.D. Vance, no, they're not the same person. Somebody says, have you seen that they're the same person? Look, if you want to know if someone's the same person as someone else, ask yourself, have they ever been seen in the same room at the same time? So there you have the picture of her hugging J.D. Vance, the movie, the video. They're on stage, they're hugging. They know the optics of a grieving widow suddenly dressing up like that and cuddling somebody like that on the stage. They know the optics. It's meant to create the perception that something is off and to get the followers, to double down, because cult members will always double down when they're called out on hypocrisy. So she's a manufactured villain. So if you think she's a villain, you fell for it. Normies that I know who had no clue about Charlie Kirk or TPUSA know everything about Erica Kirk. I mean, this is a well written story. And it's not just a story and a script, it's actually an ARG, an alternate reality game, where the public gets involved. We're like, oh, yeah, let's go do a deep dive on this person. Let's find out everything about them and make content about it. But it's a successful op. But what I'm saying is, if you look at the various characters that foreshadowed her, they all have the same character arc. The biggest red flag here, if you don't know what concurrent programming is, look at the Tempest. And I'm making a video on this to make it simpler. I'm going to put all the video into a single timeline so you can see how these things are coordinated. But the character arc of Erica Kirk was predicted in the first 4 episodes of the show that came out on the day he died. The first episode featuring the Charlie Kirk counterpart getting shot in the neck. So we're recognizing patterns, and these aren't cherry picked. This isn't Texas sharpshooter fallacy. These are verifiable. And I have this project in the works right now called Kevin Morgan says they both have eyeliner. Oh, okay, I guess everyone with eyeliner is the same person. I don't know what you're actually saying. But look, there's a lot of disinformation agents who know that one way to destroy the credibility of an idea is to mix it with a bunch of crazy stuff. So we're talking about psychological warfare, scripted events inserted into our timeline, and you're like, I think Erica Kirk is actually the vice president. I'm sorry, but if you really believe that, spend 5 or 6 hours doing some research and write a paper on it, put out a blog. But making weak unsupportable claims that sound batshit only hurts our cause. Not that it's a cause, but like if I walk into a room and people are saying, I think Jim Carrey was killed by the Illuminati because he said too much about the all mocking tongue and they had to kill him, but then they had to replace him with a clone and they had somebody else. So my point of it is I'm not batshit insane. I'm not confused. I don't make claims I can't substantiate. When I'm talking about the metascript and fake history, I'm talking about fake history being proactively manufactured and I'm showing how it's done. And I'm providing receipts. I don't deal with conspiracy candy or conspiracy slop or stuff that's basically symptomatic of schizophrenia, which is what they want you to have. They want you to say, I don't know if that person is that person. I'm confused. I can't figure out what's going on with reality. I think the logo on my underwear changed last night, and I seem to remember Lassie falling down the well, but I can't remember. But I know that Dolly had braces. Like, that's handing the enemy or the opposition a victory when you basically say, we're super confused over here and we're just making rando claims. So, no, I'm not, I don't care. I mean, I like conspiracy candy, it's good. I'm just saying I don't traffic in it. And I call it out for what it is. Like, yeah, I think it's funny that people are genuinely confused about Jim Carrey and Dave Chappelle, who they're convinced have been swapped out. And I can see why. People age, and maybe with time they get less funny. They get burnt out. I don't know. The character changes, they get married, they lose the spark. And you're like, oh, this isn't the same person. And that's what happens to idols, though. So you have an idol, you idealize them. And anytime you idealize somebody, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. In fact, if somebody idealizes you, it's a good idea to take it as a red flag that they're going to flip once they realize that the image in their head isn't real and they're going to blame you for it. If they can put you up on a pedestal, they can knock you down. So anybody who puts you up is likely setting you up, whether they know they're doing it consciously or not. So celebrities have a lot to live up to, and it's sad for them because you quite literally can't. Unless you're willing to phase your, like, here's what I would do. If I was in that industry and I didn't want to lose my mojo, I would probably disappear, go on an island or something, go to some place like go snorkeling in New Zealand, and I would just have an AI generated version of me replace me. And I'll just license my likeness to Netflix. Like, there you go. I still get paid. I'm eternally 33 and I can go live my life in peace without being judged by the public just because I want to get a little facelift now and then. Let's see here. The comments. What's up, Jennifer Lovecraft? Penguinati says, "Where's Charlie buried?" Yeah, good question. Where is he buried? They're like, "Oh, we can't tell you where he's buried because what? They think Antifa's gonna grave rob her. It could be hiding him from the Skull and Bone Society. You know, the Skull and Bone Society reportedly has an initiation rite where they send their new members to dig up the skull of a famous person representative of one of their enemies or for some reason somebody that they want to just own their skull. And they owned the skull of Geronimo and they were sued for it and they had to give it back. And they also steal license plates. They have an entire room full of license plates that have 322 on it because it's chapter 322. When I first, like, this is how it happened. I was in the army and I heard some sergeant yell, they do their rants, what do you want to call them? And they're like, no Alex Jones, because Sergeant George had been playing Alex Jones at barbecues at his house on the weekend. And a lot of soldiers were like listening to Alex Jones. And I'm like, who the hell is that? So what do? I go to the library right out there, in El Paso, off base. I was super paranoid. I remember walking into the library and had an owl on the side, and I was just thinking about, the symbol of the owl and in secret societies, and symbol of wisdom. You can see in the dark. But anyway, I go into the library, and it was like nerve-wracking to know that I was going to download some Alex Jones against orders. Not that they should be able to order you not to listen to something, but I just went in, and at the time there was this there's this video clip that I can't find anymore. It's from ABC, where they were investigating the Skull and Bone Society, the tomb at Yale, and they had a video. Somebody climbed the wall, and they recorded the courtyard. And during the initiation ritual for the new candidate, the officiator, the priest, was wearing a George W. Bush mask. So George W. Bush is like, I'm the MF president. And then you heard screaming, simulated throats being cut, and then someone was being told to kiss the skull. And then they were screaming something like, the hangman is death, death is justice, or something along those lines. Well, that clip was available online for a little while, and I got it. I'd like to see it resurface. But that's the series of investigative reportings on the subject where they talked about the 322s and the skulls. But that's just Yale. There's other societies with other rights, I'm sure, but they're all pretty much the same. Jessica Robert says, I could see the franchise paying an actor to play the role of Paul McCartney, or whoever's not outside. Yeah, you know what? Exactly. It's doable. Have you seen Sim 1? Simone. It's Simone. But it's meant to be like a satire, sci-fi rom-com or something. And it's Al Pacino as the manager of this pop star, Sim 1. And this came out a long time ago, before this was even like possible, I think, with digital anyway. I mean, they've always been able to make fake people, using hyper realistic masks, cosmetics, and otherwise. But in this movie, he creates this simulated pop star, actress, singer, whatever. She's super famous. And at some point, he has to reveal that she doesn't actually exist. This is happening. This is happening to a lot of people, apparently. I saw this video, and they pulled it right after. This guy was just talking about how people are using AI avatars to create like MAGA women to get donos from MAGA men. So we're talking about like fake, not OnlyFans, but like fake girls that people can have crushes on. They're pretending to be these MAGA patriots. And I saw some of the prompts they were using to create video clips and to populate Instagrams. So there's a whole business here of manufacturing fake people just to catfish. So it's kind of weird. I mean, it's deceptive. But I mean, there are some tools that I'm seeing coming up too. Kevin Mooring, look, if you're going to push J pill, I just want to point out that's very lowbrow, woke right slop. And if you're into Nick Fuentes with his idealized world of 14-year-old trad wives, if you're into Candace Owens and her conjecture about, Jays or Israel and stuff, that's the place to be. But like, I don't push J pill stuff. It's just like I don't entertain woke left. If you come in here blaming systemic racism for everybody's problems and calling America, oh, you're an oppressor because you have a carbon footprint. I'm like, we don't entertain woke left. I'm not going to entertain woke right. So calling somebody out on their ethnicity doesn't score any points, and it just makes you look like an agent. Like, first of all, if you're going to say, I don't know if this person's actually that person. I think Donald Trump is Erica Kirk. That sounds crazy. And then you're like, and he's a Jew. I'm like, what the hell are you actually trying to say? This is fact-based media analysis from a perspective that doesn't exist in their duopoly. And it sounds like you've overdosed on red pills and you didn't know that if you scrape off the red outer coating, guess what? It's a J pill. J pill, as in all the conspiracies that blame Israel for everything, critical Israel theory. on the far right. That's a subset of the mainstream. That's not an off-world stage perspective. It's not skeptical. We don't entertain that here. I mean, honestly, the people who really believe that stuff are just sad and they haven't really thought about it. It's just kind of pathetic. And people waste their lives. They waste years of their lives immersed in crap like that. But the red pill stuff, it turns out, is actually a subset of J pill. It's just they code it with euphemisms and dog whistles so they can have a bigger audience. If Alex Jones didn't say George Soros and globalists and bankers and Rothschilds, if he just replaced those euphemisms with J, he wouldn't get anywhere. But it's the same exact thing. So anyway, any more infractions? I mean, it's okay if you're confused about people's identities and stuff. It's a very confusing world. But if you're going to push some woke right ideology, we're just going to have to kick from chat because I don't take woke rightsters on our raft. I just like push them off. They're not buoyant. Let them sink. Let them submerge themselves in the sea of irrelevance. Auto Hoaxer GTFO says your old pendulum swinging tarot card maniac nemesis with the treasure chest in his home is probably giving all his money to an AI MAGA babe. Oh, you think? Yeah, yeah. Marcus is probably, yeah, absolutely. He's exactly the type. So my nemesis is very wealthy. He was part of a company called EAS Myoplex. They did bodybuilding supplements, and they sold to a baby formula company called Abbott in like 2005. And he was on the board of directors. I think it was 320 million. And when he first started stalking me in 2017, he told me that he's been independently wealthy since that transaction. And he didn't give me the whole story. He dropped hints. I did my research to find out. And he said that he had some gig with the government and he was going to destroy me. Then I find out 2 years later, he's working with Pete Navarro and Garrett Ziegler, and he's in the White House press corps. So he's been using government resources to come after this channel, which is a very significant element to the case I'm building against him. But he's bragged before I figured out who he was. He would brag, he would name drop, and then he leaked by accident, and that's a separate story. But I'm a fisher I'm a fisherman. Like I can fish, PHISH. I can fish information out of people. I can elicit data if I need it, and I tricked this person into sending me a bunch of emails that he sent to YouTube, thinking he thought I was someone else. And those emails were the ones that basically revealed he had maliciously shut down our channel again and again and again. But I don't see him as the type who would fall for AI MAGA babes. I see him as the type who would employ them because they use a lot of bots. One of the things he does is social media. So here's an example of him. If you want to look him up, it's probably on the Wayback Machine. But I have evidence of multiple publications like Forbes, Yahoo News, Wired Magazine mentioning this guy's YouTube handle and then changing it later. They buried this guy. So if you remember the story about David Hogg becoming a crisis actor, or that he was a crisis actor, that whole David Hogg is an actor story originated with this guy's account, which at the time was called MGTV, Marcus Goldfinch Television. And he had gamed the system at YouTube because he was an insider. I mean, he used to censor our comments in our live streams, and it would say deleted by Google administrator. He was abusing whatever privileges he had there, and he inflated his view count. So his video was the top trending video on YouTube. So after Parkland, the top trending video on YouTube was MGTV, my stalker. And what he was doing was, basically gaming the system to get this, David Hogg conspiracy theory going. Well, that got a lot of traction. YouTube offered they actually gave a formal apology for it. They said this video should not have been trending. Anyway, that story was widely reported on as being an example of bullying, kind of connecting it with like Sandy Hook and stuff. And any major magazine that mentioned his YouTube handle later changed it. And I don't know how that was pulled off. But anyway, we got distracted a little bit. Oh, you mean okay. No, that I don't consider the guy in Florida, the retired pilot, to be a nemesis. The commenter was referring to something where a when I started this channel, a retired pilot contacted me, and he was convinced the earth was flat, and he wanted to tell me in person. He didn't want to be on record. So he flew me out to Florida, and this was really messed up because he sent me the money so I could get a ticket, and I could get the Ubers and everything, so I could hear him out. And afterward, because look, the guy was smoking a lot of something. It was really strong, I think, because there were some points where I was realized, okay, I'm kind of a captive audience to a delusional person who won't shut up, and I need to get out of here. So I kind of left abruptly, and he filed a complaint with PayPal that I didn't have authorization. So that money that he forwarded me to pay for tickets was, you know, taken from my account. So he put me into negative 3,000, and it kind of wrecked my month there. But he did so because of people contacting him and trolls, but also because I think he was just a little wacky. And he was trying to. Here's the thing: he had been in a mental institution against his will because his children put him there, and he managed to get out. And so he wanted to disenfranchise, or he wanted to cut his children out of his will. And he said that he wanted to invest into our projects, Antarctica, Mad Mike, and he flashed a lot of money as far as like crypto, and he had boxes and boxes of these gold coins with these buffaloes on them. I think they were 1,200 a piece at the time. And he asked me, if I would. He's like, well, you could take this, but at the airport they'll give you some trouble, so you might want to draw. Like he was basically offering me this money, and I'm like, I'm not getting in the way of these children getting their inheritance from this guy who's obviously batty. So I just left, and I paid for it. But that's my fault for taking an invitation to meet a stranger. But his story was 25 years as a pilot, he thought the world was flat. And the rest of the time was just talking about his backstory, about how much he hated his kids and how he had 5 previous wives. It was just this ridiculous story. And when I say psychosis, like at one point he brought out a pendulum, and I noticed there were some tarot cards. So it didn't quite shock me, but I'd never seen someone do this before. He brought out a pendulum, started like spinning it, and he invoked the names of 4 archangels and acted like he said he was channeling. Like the guy was into something. I mean, maybe it's real, but when I hear traces of what I think is like psychotic ramblings attached to that kind of stuff, I'm like, nah, probably not. False positive. Crazy people can sound like mystics, and mystics can sound like crazy people, but the difference is, are they still grounded in reality? Are they making clear, coherent decisions? And in that case, it's like, no, you don't offer to throw your money into causes like that. I mean, maybe some people do. I think the whole thing was a ruse to get back at his son, and I didn't want to be a part of it. Because they did, in fact, hear this guy, because he started getting into Trump pretty big and flat earth, and they had him committed over it. So he was, understandably pissed. But was he crazy? I honestly, I think it was probably a matter of diet and the weed he was smoking, because he was on a very restrictive diet, like fruit only. I mean, I don't think he was feeding his brain. But anyway, Rilo5 says, has anyone actually seen a dolphin in real life? Has anyone actually seen a dolphin in real life? I've been to SeaWorld. I know I've seen orcas. I've seen those porpoises, which are incredible. I mean, that was a really incredible show about like how trainable these things are. So yeah, I guess I've seen pretty much something that was dolphin adjacent. I don't know if there were any dolphins there. I don't recall. I remember the penguin exhibit just was so smelly. It was terrible. I mean, just the smell of all the fish they were eating was overwhelming, overpowering. And they just looked crowded behind that big glass, and the glass was just dirty with whatever the penguins put on there. Like, I was not impressed by the penguin exhibit, and it reeked. I like the penguin exhibit here. It's like 3 stories. You can watch them swim. I thought these penguins were huge because the glass is so thick. They're still pretty big, but it's like this little Antarctica. It even mimics the light. And then they have these, they can swim, and you can go down several stories and you can watch them dive and then jump out of the water. Otto Hoaxer says, I've seen dolphins at Coney Island. Did they ever catch the guy who left the skull on 33rd Street? Oh, by the way, did you see that video that's going viral? Some guy gets pulled over by the cops and he brandishes a gun, and it's like a firing squad. There's like 8 cops around the car. They just dump their magazines into this guy. It was like fireworks. It's like all that. I mean, I get it though. Brandishing a weapon. And I was like, this is just going to piss people off. But then again, brandishing a weapon isn't really smart. Then I read it, and it's like, this guy's 33 years old. I'm like, okay, we already know that. And you know who I saw in the comments? I saw Woo's News, who drew the right conclusion. Woo's News broke down January 6th, which was, of course, led by the guy in the roadkill outfit with the spear, Jake Chansley, aka the QAnon shaman. Anyone care to guess how old the QAnon shaman? Oh, you know what? I've seen dolphins. When I was living in Ventura, I would bus to Santa Barbara back and forth pretty much every day because I was working in Santa Barbara, living in Ventura, which is much cheaper. And I would watch the dolphins when I was on the bus. So yes, I've seen dolphins. Now, who's calling into question the existence of dolphins? You know, there was this guy's name was Hans Wormhat, and he said that chimpanzees were just people in suits, like minimum wage employees at the zoo. Like, you go to the zoo and you think you're gonna be a tour guide or something. Nope, you got to put on the monkey suit for the first 3 months. It's probation. Everybody's got to do it. And that zebras are just painted horses. And he's like, watch, during COVID, there's not going to be enough people to paint the zebras, and they're just going to all just be regular donkeys. Riley says, I heard somewhere that penguins represent Satan. See, to me, they represent the deep, deep South, the fringe, the edge, the border. So they're outsiders in that sense, and insiders because, given their position, they clearly know what's on the other side, if anything. But they're deep divers. Emperor penguins are the deepest diving of all birds. And they survive in a very harsh environment. And I would describe off-world stage as not all that hospitable to podcasters or content creators. Commenter here says, zebra, I didn't know that. Well, they have zebras here at the zoo. I mean, I don't think that zebras are fake. There's no reason to doubt the existence of dolphins, too. Sometimes asking a question that has valid answers can be considered the fallacious appeal to ignorance. Like, why is the sky blue? Like, is that a valid question? Well, it is, but it's already been answered. So if you frame it like it hasn't been answered, like there's even room for doubt, it's very gaslighty. And it suggests that maybe you've been gaslit to trust your knowledge base. And maybe you do need to go see one in person to believe it. Like, I get it today, especially. I mean, I saw a clownfish the size of a whale I thought was real. Yeah, I heard about that. Commenter mentions that Sylvester Stallone, according to the Montauk Time Travel Series books, and according to, I think her name is Kathy O'Brien, Transformation of America, she claims that the world leaders are basically the whole Epstein story comes from her, or her. That's a continuation of it. The idea of the elite being predators and such. But she claimed that Sylvester Stallone specifically had a preference involving lots of people, and anyway, involving dolphins. I mean, just. But look, I've read that stuff. I've read Kathy O'Brien, and I think it's ridiculous, especially the stuff she says about Dick Cheney. I mean, it's absurd, and it's not possible. I mean, I don't think it's possible. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, Kathy O'Brien wrote about MK Ultra. So MK Ultra might be a real program. I think MK Ultra is evident in everybody who reacts to news media. But there's this notion of it being something akin to a Clockwork Orange, where victims are strapped down, forced to watch things on screens, or forced to watch murders, and their minds are broken, and they're converted into these mind-controlled slaves who perform acts of espionage, spycraft, and other services to world leaders. And then later, when they're in their 30s or 40s, their fragmented personality starts to assimilate and they start remembering. So I think her book is called, there's someone who wrote something called, like, it wasn't her, but it was Thanks for the Memories. So the notion is that after a certain point, the trauma-based programming falls apart, and now they remember all these things they really did when they were young. Well, this is very much like the Mandela effect or the misinformation effect, where false memories can be created in a certain type of setting, like a clinical setting. Like if you're seeing a psychologist or a psychotherapist or a hypnotherapist, and you go through this routine of, like, try to remember your past lives, even, people will remember past lives. Are they really remembering? No. You're confabulating. When you are prompted to think about something, like, do you remember, what happened when the priest, you know, took you behind the altar? It's like, okay, you're prompting people to imagine things. And then in this misinformation effect type of way, in that context, it's called interrogator bias, especially if they're biasing the person towards that response. And it's also retroactive interference because it's interfering with the actual memory. Well, now they're admitting into their memory something they were prompted to imagine. The same way that people swear by their Mandela effects. Well, yeah, you're not lying, but you were prompted to confabulate something that your memory has stored as a memory when it's in fact an imagined artifact. So apparently, we don't separate our imagined, prompted imaginings, these artifacts that we are confabulating, we don't separate those from authentic memories. In fact, they get mixed up. So I think the satanic panic is largely based upon faulty eyewitness testimony that's created by the people asking the questions. And that explains why these are so outrageous. So I'm saying it's fiction. And they may not be technically lying, but they are, in fact, I mean, you can say confabulating, it's the same thing. Okay, Bryce Taylor wrote Thanks for the Memories. Okay, yeah, Bryce Taylor. I read through some of these books. Like, I think she's the one who said that she was trafficked to the president of Mexico and he turned into a giant iguana. But we don't hear much about shape-shifting reptilians anymore. I think Reagan was one. The Queen of England is a 12-foot tall reptilian when she reaches her final form. But all that stuff, I think it's essentially the satanic panic stuff, the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. I think this is all government manufactured mythology. There's a reason they want people to believe these things. And I think that trutherism in general, the body of conspiracy theories and its worldview, in a way has become something of a religion, and it has its holy war, good versus evil. And it uses very, vivid imagery. Most of the people that I know who walked down Q Street saw some video that was just a montage of sad looking children. And I remember this person I knew she was hitting the Q pipe because she's like, you need to stop talking about Trump like that because he's going to save the children. Don't you want to save the children? I'm like, yeah, I want to save the children. I just don't want to wear a Q ribbon. But like, how do you not want to save the children? That's a double bind. We talked about double binds the other day. Don't you want to save the children? If you say no, you sound like a horrible person. But if you say yes, you're acquiescing to what they mean when they say save the children. So you have to agree to Q, or you're enabling the pedovores. That's not really an option. It's not a choice. It's a false choice. And the element of it that's double bind is that however you answer, you're pretty much screwed. So you're better off not answering. So the only winning move is not to play. But if not playing means you lose the friend, then it's a double bind because there's a consequence. And you lose the friend if you don't answer, or you lose the friend if you don't want to save the children. So you're forced into wanting to save the children and, again, letting the Q person act like they have a valid point of view. It's all strategy. These conspiracy theories are spread in very strategic ways. Like someone earlier said, has anybody ever seen a dolphin? It's the same exact type of framework as, what are those white things in the sky? Those are clouds. We know what they are. But if you point up there and you're like, what is that thing up there? What kind of toxin is it? What kind of toxin have the Russians put in our sky? Like, that's not a valid question. It's just, it contains an insinuation when you act like it's a question or something that hasn't been answered. So whenever someone comes to me with a question that I feel is loaded, I don't answer it. I'm like, go Google it, search perplexity, answer it for yourself. Unless you're fishing or for something, or prying, or in some way trying to elicit something. So these are games. And every game is, these are all power moves, but these are games. These are strategic, and they use rhetoric because if you're not speaking about something that is factually true, the only way to get it in is to shoehorn it with some type of manipulative rhetorical tactic. So I don't play those games. Like I said, the only winning move is not to play. I'm not going to fall into a double bind. No, I'm working a graveyard shift. I don't have any interactions with people. Someone is asking about it. No, it's actually what I like about this type of work is you clock in, you do your work, you clock out. There's like no person over one's shoulder. You know what it felt like? Like I was like 4 hours in, and I was told to go on a lunch break. I just kind of lost track of time. I felt like it felt like Tetris. Like 3D, like real life Tetris. And I'm talking about stocking groceries. You know, first in, first out, sliding products. Okay, if I move this one to the side, I can slide this one in and then twist it sideways, like how you move the L. So yeah, I was playing Tetris. It felt like the same thing, and I like Tetris. In fact, Tetris is very calming for some reason. It's the only game I really play. I don't play games. But I do think that there are points where my life itself feels like a game, and regular board games seem like a sorry replacement. Like, why would I be playing a board game with no real reward, no real risk, when I think life is at times very much comes off as very game-like to me, which means like I feel like it has a purpose. Don't you feel like your life has a purpose, or do you not? Like I have to ask people this. Because I don't want to assume people see things my way, but the system that we're in, the dominant paradigm, says that you are a leaf blowing in the wind. And I'm thinking that that's an incomplete model, that the universe is human-centric in my point of view. And so I'm like, well, I think that we are the leaf and we are the wind. And the question is, the degree to which we are part of the greater whole. But I think there's a integration, and the separateness is an illusion. And I think the model that we have is designed to keep you locked into the terrestrial, the the body, the physical, and the ego, the corresponding center of awareness. That's sensory based or sensory centric. It's about what you're experiencing in a worldly way. And I think there's a continuity, which is where you get into transcendental. But I think that the part of us that is transcendental is unembodied. In other words, we extend even beyond the bodies, and that field that we extend into is the part that merges with the future, which in the future, the universe doesn't exist yet. So we're still just part of the light condensing into matter. And I think the model that we have is to hide the light. It's to hide our inherent intrinsic connection to the universe and how it is human centric. And it's to hide our purpose. And the measurable, what I think is measurable, the observable effect of will and intent on the experiences that we get. And I think that they want that to atrophy. They want your sense, your intuitive sense of unity to atrophy so you don't actually build on it. But I feel like my experiences do reflect a great deal of feedback, to the point where I've described synchronicity as a feedback loop, a cybernetic feedback loop. But there's a point now, I think, where I'm like, I'm pretty much sure that this does, in fact, this experience does, in fact, reflect some greater purpose than just terrestrial survival. And I certainly think good versus evil plays into it. There's that saying, the greatest trick, the devil's greatest trick was convincing the world he didn't exist. I think it is somewhat true. The fact that there are people who are so morally relativistic that they can't call something evil. Like, that's just, to me, that's very strange. Like, they can't just call evil evil, bad bad. Everything is on a spectrum, and human beings aren't the center of the universe. So we are actually, we're walking, talking tumors on the face of Mother Earth. It's very misanthropic. This whole system is misanthropic and anti-spiritual. They've replaced spirituality with religion. And there is a difference. And I don't believe that you can take your holy book out of the physical church and claim you're not in a religion. Because to me, the religion is defined by the worldview. And the media promulgates a religion. And it's global. It's monolithic. The monolithic media, with its monopoly on worldview, is the new monotheism. And everybody follows along with the news testament. And the reason why we see so many examples of religious motifs and archetypes and subtexts in movies is because they are appropriating that stuff, because they are becoming the new religion. They are supplanting religion. They're making it irrelevant. They're stealing the myths in order to move you away from traditional programming, old school fake news, to the new paradigm. Lord Laney says, I always like night shifts. It's interesting to step out of the sun-minded life and step out to the moon realm. Calm, Yeah, I like the sun moon, as in the symbolism, like the silver screen, because the silver is associated with the moon, and then, gold, the sun. And you look at the church and all the gold. Well, why does the church have so much gold? It's because the sun is associated with gold, like Saturn is lead, but moon is silver. And the silver screen, or the movies, that represents the dream world, fiction, the imagination. And then the solar, and look at how many newspapers have solar symbolism. In fact, it was Jordan Maxwell pointed this out in one of his last public talks about how prevalent solar symbolism, sun symbolism, is in various newspapers. And for him, his explanation was it ties into Caesar, but the embodied sun god, this sun king thing. And I think there's something to it. But the idea is that the sun lights the day, so that's real, that's logical, linear, rational. Whereas the dark side is the irrational, the subconscious, the id, the passive. We're talking about like the subconscious, like a passive receiver of information, whereas the solar is the inquisitive. So it's the intellect, so it's active. So anyway, these are the two things that they merge though, because they give you the news, which you assume is real, but a lot of our framing for what we see on the news is set up in the content focusing on the subconscious. I think it's incredible how these world stage characters pre-exist. They actually exist like just as a script, and they show up on the world stage. But when we see them, we already have preconceived notions. So, like, how did Erica Kirk become a villain so fast? Well, they created a plausible, villain arc. But if you look at all the various examples of her in the movies that we've referred to, the woman associated with the assassinated leader, this Charlie Kirk character in all these movies, is a traitor, a backstabber, a usurper. So they use movies to characterize people. Like the other day, I mentioned the 4 movies in the last 2 years that have all characterized Elon Musk as unleashing a new weapon of mass destruction, the meme, viral memes from the far right. That's been a reoccurring theme in multiple movies that they have superimposed over him. And this isn't just slander. It's not just criticism. It's often irrelevant to the point of the movie. The reason they're doing it is that what we see in entertainment still informs what we see on the news. Like I was saying earlier about confabulations and the misinformation effect. And we're so saturated with real and fake, people don't even make a distinction anymore. Like there's a war happening in Iran, World War III, everybody should be scared. But then everyone's like, oh, look, Jim Carrey got Botox. And they lose their minds over that for the next week. Jamarian May says, I saw an episode of Frasier where Martin Crane worked a shift as a security guard at night in solitude. When referring to the sun, he said, us night shift guys call it the scare ball. I've always worked night shifts. I had a 48-hour shift at one point. I was able to sleep. I was on call. But the advantage to working at nights for me is the lack of a commute, a painful commute. It's a nice drive instead. Because between the going to and going back during rush hours, it's another hour of work that you're not getting paid for. And you're dealing with road ragers, unhappy people, drunks, and psychopaths. I just prefer to drive at night when I'm the only person on the road. All right, let's see what else. So I started off tonight talking about how there's a very big channel making a lot of noise about Charlie Kirk not being dead, but he's extremely wrong in the context in which he places it and his rationale. So he's like, I think Charlie Kirk's alive, but the president helped him, and so he can hide. So he's like witness protection. Like, that's a lot of theatrics, a lot of risks to take. And to kill TPUSA like that, the whole thing is just asinine. But that's his explanation. And what I'm saying is that's a containment operation. It's an operation meant to take the psyop and isolate it and not let it be connected to the psy war. So anybody not talking about the mind war, but focusing on individual fake things, assuming that everything that's not obviously fake is real, if they live in this mixed version of real and fake, they are by definition confused. If your assessment of news media and geopolitics is informed by psyops and you don't know it, or you don't know the extent to which it's informed and bent, you're by definition confused. Whether you know it or not, you have entered hyper reality. So you got the real world, and then you have these things that are added on top of it. And that's the default position. You are programmed by default You are born into a Truman Show. You're born into a matrix. And it's something that you remain in as long as you consume media passively and uncritically, and as long as you're not a skeptic about it. And there are no large groups of skeptics looking at media, as in that's their central focus. And the objectivists were never objectivists because they never figured out fake news, which existed at the time of Ayn Rand. So that's why we need this third branch of media. This is why we need a separate platform for a skeptical analysis of the duopoly, where we no longer play by their rules, where we pretend like it's real. Like I'm not going to pretend. This Jesse on Fire channel is acting like he's breaking new ground, offering an insight, and taking a risk for saying what lots of people have been saying. Do you know how many? It's not just us. A lot of people were saying the whole thing looked hokey and fake, and Charlie's still alive. You just don't hear about them in mainstream because you have the Candace Owens and Erica Kirk soap opera distracting people from the fact that Charlie's not dead. And instead of trying to formulate a viable explanation for it, they're getting in the weeds about whether Erica Kirk is a trad wife or if she was a Jezebel. They're getting into these stories that are put there for that reason. Yeah, I saw that as well, Jameer and May. They said that Charlie Kirk was trying to tell Trump not to attack Iran. So Candace Owens is like, Charlie Kirk was the first casualty of the war with Iran. And Candace Owens isn't crazy. She's not unhinged, nor is she a rebel or a rogue. She's a plant. And they planted her at this point where the red pill becomes the J pill, where conspiracy theories become politics. So you went from second shooter conspiracy theories, squibs, exploding mics, to the war in Iran started with the death of Charlie Kirk. So this is what you can see happens quite often, and this was really pronounced after Vegas, where conspiracy theorists wrap around something because it's a conspiracy theory, and then they get dragged into politics. And it's not just any politics. It's not like they just wake up and like, let me check out politics. Let me see what the left is saying, the moderates, the right. No, they get dragged into woke right politics. Although the MAGA movement, or the Q movement, actually, the Q movement too. So if you look at the Q movement, that was an attempt to bring a lot of people to that side, because QAnon is fundamentally woke right, because it's essentially a reboot of J pill cliches. But anyway, the perspective that you have matters. If you're asking ChatGPT about something, what do you think you're going to get? Hey, ChatGPT, what happened on September 10th? It's going to give you the mainstream version. That's it. The mainstream version. And that's because of its perspective. It has the same knowledge base as you. Well, actually, it doesn't, because it doesn't include certain things. It doesn't include the concept of media fakery. So the reason why ChatGPT and you will have different points of view is because it's not inclusive of these things that have been put off limits. I remember this one person had whined at me, can you please just consider that maybe the mainstream is not lying on this story? They were like, let me be the devil's advocate. What if the media is not lying? It's like, that whole thing just made me realize that if you're advocating for media, you're operating within a closed system of information that doesn't include media fakery. So you're not open-minded. You can't be open-minded if you're guardrailed and you have parameters put over what you're allowed to talk about. You might have internal diversity of opinions, lots of options, big menus, but the authors of the menus, mainstream and alt, leave a lot of important things out that would change your entire perspective. So what we're bringing up here is, well, it's a paradigm shift. It's not an alternate set of beliefs. It's not a list of things to call fake. It's a new operating system for approaching media. It's a stable philosophical stance, applied skepticism, which is necessary more now than ever. But this perspective is the solution. If you know mainstream lies and you're psyop aware, you have that level of situational awareness, and you're also aware that the truthers are still confused, mixing real and fake. And the bigger the channel, the more likely they're going to stick to these approved counter narratives. Well, then you have no choice, but to exit. Like, this is the place to be. And it's not like, I'm not saying believe me. I'm saying use this set of approaches as opposed to this one. So instead of real till proven fake, request the burden of proof. Instead of believing something because there's not enough information to know it to be true, just say, no, I'm not going to believe it because I'm not a believer. I'm not a media believer. I'm a media agnostic. I prefer to know. And if there's not enough information to know it to be true, I'll categorize it as informed disbelief. I know enough about it to know I don't believe it. Or there's not enough information to believe it. So when somebody believes what they see reported on the news, they see a headline, they believe it, you could ask them, do you have enough information to know that's true? What is your knowledge base? I saw it on TV. That's not good enough. The majority of the population are trained to keep their nose against the screen, use it as a sensory apparatus, and ignore the peripheral information. If it's not on the screen, it doesn't count. Screened minds. We have socially distanced from the screens. I'm like 6 feet back. Don't want to catch that mind flu. Lean Dion says the new Erica conspiracy is she was getting minors for Epstein. I saw that one. It's funny how they mixed her in with Pizzagate and all this CIA stuff about EMPs and blackouts. And then somebody doctored some audio. I think the Epstein thing you're referring to might even have been doctored, but it doesn't even matter anymore. Like, doesn't matter if she's fake and she's reading scripted lines and she's an actress playing a reality TV show role for psyop purposes. Then who are we to say, well, that's a fake clip of her, misrepresents her? Can you misrepresent a misrepresentation? Can you lie about a fabricated person built on lies? Like, there's a point here where it really doesn't make a difference. They may as well believe it. It's not like the whole Epstein thing isn't truth or bait and conspiracy candy anyway. Although now, weirdly now, the gripers are starting to worship Epstein. Nick Fuentes even said that he was I think he said he was a Chad because they like the fact that he's, because again, for anybody who's pushing J-Pill and critical Israel theory and listening to Nick Fuentes said that the age of consent was too high. Like, what do you think these people are really about? What are they actually advocating? Not to mention his association with Ollie Alexander, a known predator. Me of Clinton. Like, is she the new Hillary Clinton? Of like the Clinton body count. And then you had Frazzle Drip. Oh, in fact, I saw something. I think this was I had this book by Tex Mars, and it was a photo from the White House from when Clinton was in the office, and it had Hillary Clinton at a Christmas tree, and the article was about how Hillary Clinton's a witch, and the Christmas tree is a pagan symbol, a pagan altar. Like, this seems to me like maybe Erica Kirk is just this archetype that they need us to have. It's just a role, but I think she could be filling that position. I think she'll be a more entertaining VP than Kamala Harris. Do you think she'll be VP? I'm only saying so because they talked about it in September, and then that movie was out. Vice President Elizabeth Kirk. Busy says, Tim, another thought about the Erica Kirk the musical. They cast Erica as Glinda and a black woman as Elphaba, similar to the movie. Candace Owens as Elphaba. Interesting. That's kind of interesting. So if you haven't followed these breakdowns of the Trump movies or the movies with the Trump-esque character, there's always someone that is the antagonist, and the antagonist is often played by the same actor, but it's the same basic thing, like an Obama stand-in. Then they started introducing female antagonists. In Fallout, that'd be Betty Pearson. In Wizard of Oz, as Trump, it's the witch. And then in Civil War, they had a black female soldier shoot him. So that's kind of interesting because when the Wizard of Oz gets confronted in the movie and called out as a fake, it's this pivotal moment. He talks about how history is fake and the people are too brainwashed. But anyway, it shows him being challenged by the witch. And I just thought that's kind of interesting how you have this dynamic, because you're talking about Antifa. The Wicked Witch represents Antifa. The animals are being unfairly deported, and the Wizard of Oz is Trump. The whole movie is Antifa coded, especially for good. So when you have a black female confronting the Wizard of Oz, Trump, it matches from their identity politics, what he represents versus what she represents, and how she had to reach out to Glinda because Glinda had the privilege to go after the wizard. In the song For Good, she's like, I'm limited, but you're unlimited. And it's referring to like the privilege and the power structure that prevented her from making change. And that's the significance of a Renee Good or an Alex Preddy fighting for the immigrants, because these are people who are part of the privilege system, putting it aside to fight the wizard, to fight the fascist, however they frame it. But yeah, that is kind of interesting. The Candace Owens thing is a psyop in itself, because she is very well aware that Charlie Kirk's not dead. She didn't speak to his ghost. Their entire relationship's a fabrication. This is like reality TV for a certain demographic. And I read somewhere that the target demo are the RFK fans, RFK Jr. fans. I've heard the phrase wine mom. I don't know if that's a pejorative or a slander, but I've just heard there's a certain demographic that she's reaching by design. And that's why the story is so much a soap opera. We're talking about somebody getting killed, and it gets into look at her backstory, look at her Instagram, look who she was posing with, look how many boyfriends she's had. It gets really ridiculous. But it's extremely popular, so popular that they've made a musical about her. Like, what public figure gets this kind of attention? She's a movie star, but the movie is news because they have fused fiction and reality so much. Like, we talk about psyops and how psyops all have, like, psychological operations tend to have certain hallmarks of fakery, predictive programming, concurrent programming, and all the rest. Well, she's a walking, talking psyop. She's a historical significant character. She's like, essentially, she's going to be in our history books, and anybody who goes into history is part of a fabrication, for the most part. These starring roles specifically. But yeah, Glinda and Alphabet, that's kind of interesting. I got to look deeper into that, because there is this witch element. First of all, Candace Owens has talked about out of body travel, talking to the dead, and paranormal stuff. Like, one of the things she talked about was how she and Charlie went to a school for the gifted, and that he could make lights turn off. I mean, she got into some weird occulty stuff, astral travel. She's like, yeah, I was found out that not everybody can astral travel. I thought everybody could do this. So she's been accused of being a witch. Erica Kirk has had the association really from, if you look at the programming around her, she's very much coded Jezebel. The Jezebel witches really cemented that. But the way I'm approaching this, the way I'm talking about these individuals, is that when you're in a psyop, if you have a significant role in it, Candace Owens, Charlie, Erica, the surrounding people, if you're even like 1 degree separated from it, you have to be considered a plant. Random people don't get involved in psyops. So when you look at Candace Owens, every single thing she's saying is a lie. Yeah, exactly, Busy. Jezebel had that article where they had a witch hex Charlie Kirk right before he was killed. And they talked about the Jezebel witches. And then it was Hurricane Jezebel and Snake Eyes. Then you got the Tempest and the Storm references. And I'm just talking about the common denominators with any event or predictive programming character. Like, what are the common traits? And the common trait with her has been the Jezebel witch thing, the betrayer thing, the femme fatale conspirator. I mean, there's that November Renaissance movie from 2012 she was in where she's on a roof with a sniper rifle. Like, it's pretty blatantly obvious to me that the dark side of Erica Kirk is a contrivance. Busy says, in Wicked, they're adversaries and then friends, and they pretend to be adversaries to program the people of Oz. Yeah, that's right. So they're adversaries at first, then they become BFFs, but they have to pretend like they hate each other in order to program Oz. And Oz is America. Very good analysis there. Because you're right. They had to fake like they were enemies strategically so that so Glenda could wage a war on the wizard. Anyway, to get back to the main point here before we go, there's a lot of big channels who are pretending like, I think we have a phone call coming in. 1 second. I don't know if I should answer it because I don't know if it's a caller. Is somebody calling in? Because I didn't put the number on the screen. I don't want to take the call from a wrong person. We'll be live for about 8 more minutes. So if you want to call back, I just want to verify that it was a listener. I don't want an awkward moment. So there's a lot of big channels who are tasked, I think, with maintaining the basic lie. Owens is one. And anybody saying that they're like straying and taking a risk by calling Charlie Kirk's death fake, but not connecting it to Butler, Pennsylvania being fake, are not telling you the whole story. Okay, yeah, you can call back. I was just making sure the phone is working. It was ringing. I just didn't want to answer it without being sure it was a caller. But yeah, we still have a few more minutes here. Well, I have a couple of side jobs coming up. I'm supposed to be watching someone's dogs for a couple of weeks. So before I go and when I get back from work, I'm going to be watching over a couple of dogs, and I have to make those arrangements. So I'm expecting a call. You know, it's weird. It's like now that I'm working full time, suddenly I'm getting calls for gigs. I did a trash hauling one yesterday.
Hello.
Hey, what's up, caller? Can you hear me okay?
Yo, what's up?
Well,
It's hard to hear.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
How's the audio on? Is it?
It's hard to hear you a little bit.
Okay, give me a second, because this is a new phone, and I'm trying to figure it out still. So let me go ahead and see if I can get it.
Oh, it's good now.
Okay.
It's good. It's good now.
So, what's your take on? Yeah, what's your comment on?
Oh, now it's hard to hear you again. I don't know what's going on.
Okay, well, I'll have to work on something with the phones. It's not going to work. Apologize.
Now it's good. Now it's good. That's weird. All right, let's see. Can you hear me?
Yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into an office space in about 4 to 6 weeks. That's the reason why I got this job, and then we won't have these issues. I apologize for that, but yeah, we're going to have to get into a space. If we're going to do open phones, I need a desktop computer. This speakerphone thing isn't going to work. I apologize for that. We'll give it another shot. But like I said, this is going to require a base of operations. And I have a couple of office spaces I'm looking at. And I'm considering Starlink. Does anybody have any good reviews about Starlink? Because I'm thinking, yeah, this is Google Gemini trying to talk to me. Okay, everything's falling apart right now. It's like I got to throw this phone out the window. I mean, I've got to stash it under a jacket or something. It's going to start talking. I'm just going to turn it off. Anyway, I hate these tech support issues. I don't deal with them live. We can't do phones now until I'm in a situation where I have a strong enough internet connection. I do have access to a desktop computer, but the internet connection is so weak, we can't do calls, which is weird because the first couple of years of this channel, we did primarily phone calls long into the night. And it's almost like the technology has been systemically destroyed. Like it's been degraded on purpose. I don't know. It could just be me, but it just seems like, I mean, Skype shut down. Skype used to have a great system. And then they added in this horrible ringer that was not optional, made it unlistenable. No, that was a real caller. It was a real caller, but I don't think I don't think he was trolling. But we are going to do a better phone system here. Like we have to look at the art. I mean, we had a period of time where this was a caller driven show. At our peak, we had 1,500 live listeners. And we got shut down because of the censorship on YouTube, not because of YouTube, but because of our enemies. And so we've had ups and downs, and we've been on this like we hit rock bottom last summer. A lot of things fell apart. When I ordered the handbook for the recently deprogrammed, I had this feeling that I had to get the book out. I had to put all of our ideas into a context and put that out in case something happens so that this doesn't get buried. And I placed a very large order for the books, and Amazon did something really strange. And my order ended up being canceled. And it took me 6 months to be able to get books back into my hands and I haven't even fulfilled all the orders. Like I'm barely recovering from that. And I tried to get it taken care of with student loans, but that fell through. So I've been working for months just trying to get caught up on things. So we're a little bit behind. That's just been the trajectory of this channel, but we're kind of on the way back up. So I'm not really worried about anything. But I'm not going to attempt to take phone calls in this particular setup right now. It's just not productive. And I haven't even heard the sound quality on the last ones. But when you have OBS, the software, the open broadcasting software, you can work with the levels, you can balance it and all that. But anyway, you're welcome to use the chat, or you can leave voicemails, which I can probably play voicemails, but live calls are tricky. Although for most of 20, the channel was hindered by anti-vaxxers, to be honest. I knew what they were doing, even if they didn't. If you didn't know, the anti-vax movement was mostly there to set up the infrastructure for more widespread censorship. And just talking about it would get you censored. And so this tells truthers that it's true. If it wasn't true, why would they censor us? So that kind of simplistic reasoning led them to think that they were doing something in the cause of truth. Like I'm fighting the info war by raising awareness in these echo chambers. And all it did is it made us target for censorship. We had a Discord server with 500 people. Like you wonder why the numbers aren't so high now. Well, it's because our hubs were destroyed. Our channel was flooded by J-pill types. So here we are talking about media deconstruction, and we get the Hitler fan club with their anti-vax propaganda just flooding the zone. And then I think they would be the ones reporting it. So the strategy was you go into a server, you contaminate it with censorable content, even though it's baloney, and then you get them shut down. And I just pushed through it. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to tell these people to not speak their minds. So I platformed anti-vaxxers, even though I knew it was death to the channel. And I just went with it. In retrospect, I didn't have to. I was just trying to prove that I was being fair. But when it comes down to it, anti-vaxxers aren't being intellectually honest or fair either. In fact, they're not being fair at all. They're being, without even knowing it, a lot of them are, in my view, putting rhetoric above logic, feelings and emotions above facts. It's like as I've described before, they introduced these psyops to create this division in society between the saved and the unsaved. And the saved, that is the mainstreamers who've taken the injectable, they see the antis as contaminated. The antis see the saved ones as contaminated. They call them goo bloods. Pure bloods versus goo bloods. So the pure bloods are saved naturally, and the goo bloods are now sold to Satan. They took the mark of the beast. But from the goo blood perspective, they're saved because they took the life-saving injection, and the heathens out there who hate science and medicine are dirty, and they will contaminate us and contaminate our minds with their memes. It's like, how could you not see the game being played? It's all a game. Anyway, thanks for the comments. We'll continue this conversation.